This is Deep Dive. I'm Li Yunqi. Is China facing a shortage of skilled workers?
Things are changing fast in our industries, and our workforce is evolving quickly too, facing a lot of pressure.
At the annual session of the National People's Congress, Deputy Liu Zhong has proposed a measure to China's top legislative body, highlighting the pressing issue of insufficient blue-collar workers. The scarcity has emerged amid a digital transformation in the manufacturing sector, which has significantly escalated the demand for skilled workers. However, graduates from vocational schools continue to fall short in meeting this demand. Meanwhile, Deputy Liu also noted a decline in the overall demand in this workforce.
So, with all this happening, the demand for our technical and industrial workers is slowly going down.
This paradox raises questions about why the shortage of workers and the decrease in demand are occurring at the same time. Could this discrepancy lead to reforms in China's educational system for skilled workers? To find the answer to these questions, CGTN Radio reporter Dou Hongyu is joining this episode. She's interviewed Liu Zhong and several other NPC deputies who've made similar proposals. This episode is brought to you on Sunday, March the 10th. So Hongyu, tell us about this deputy, his proposal, and why he is making these suggestions.
Well, this deputy, his name is Liu Zhong. He's an operator in a factory producing machines for aviation applications. He's also a deputy to the National People's Congress, which is China's top legislature, so he's also a lawmaker. And this year, one of his proposals is improving vocational education. He's calling for more targeted vocational education because now the industries in China have been upgrading very quickly. The demand side in the labor market is changing very quickly. And one of the changes is that they're raising their standards for talents. Liu Zhong is calling for reform to help the vocational school students to fit into the changing labor market. And he said this is quite important both for the industries and the livelihoods of frontline workers and vocational school graduates.
So companies are looking for blue collars with more and better skill sets. And the students out of vocational education, currently they don't seem very competent to fill the needs of these companies. And overall, how are graduates from vocational schools doing on the job market in China?
Well, first of all, the graduates of vocational schools cover a huge proportion of China's labor force. Now there are a bit over 3,000 institutions of higher education, and about half of them are vocational schools. And now there are more vocational school students than undergraduates. Most of the vocational school graduates go to the second and tertiary industries. Like the most popular ones are the manufacturing, architecture, medical care, and retailing. And it is notable that the manufacturing sector has become more and more popular among vocational school graduates. Like in 2022, about 25% of graduates from higher vocational schools went to the manufacturing sector. And that was about 4 percentage points higher than 2018.
Okay.
On the other hand, the vocational school graduates are quite important for this manufacturing sector. Like in the past 10 years, about 70% of manufacturing workers are from vocational schools. But now here's a problem that lots of NPC deputies are talking about. Now there's a huge shortage of skilled talent in the manufacturing sector. By the end of next year, among the 10 key areas in the manufacturing sector, like the aviation equipment and the new energy vehicles producing, they are facing the gap of about 30 million skilled workers. But at the same time, as a lot of deputies said, it is more and more difficult for vocational school graduates to get a job in this manufacturing sector. And many of them have to go through long internship to make themselves qualified for their job in their factories. So although the companies are facing an urgent need for skilled talent, and the manufacturing sector is quite appealing to vocational school students, they still find it very difficult to match with each other.
So the graduates from vocational schools, they actually have an interest in finding a job in the manufacturing sector. And also these manufacturing companies, they're also looking for these graduates from vocational education.
Exactly.
And why there's still this shortage for the companies to find talents from the job market?
Well, now there's a huge imbalance of demand and supply side in the manufacturing labor market. Since the industries have been upgrading themselves and the factories are becoming smarter and more intelligent, now they're introducing new equipment, new facilities, new techniques, and new producing methods. But that could be quite different from what vocational school students have learned in their schools. I talked to another NPC deputy, Cao Tianlan. She works in a factory producing turbine components. Some of the components work under extremely high temperatures, so their structure inside is quite complicated. In the past, it was the workers at the front line that produced those components with their hands and their tools. But since the structure is quite complicated, they would fail a lot of times or waste a lot of time and materials to make one single item. But now they're introducing 3D printing technologies to produce such items. So now the defection rates are very low, but the working style could be quite different. It is more about creating a 3D model and inputting some parameters and monitoring the whole process and examining the final products. Now it seems that the labor work has been done by the 3D printer, but it still requires the basic skills from the workers who's monitoring the process and who's examining the products, because the original workers are now like the immediate superior of those machines. As the boss of those machines, you have to know what's supposed to be done and what is exactly happening with their products. So as Liu Zhong said, the transformation process in the factories are actually causing the polarization of labor demand. As he said, now there's no skills or advanced skills. So there's a drastic change from the demand side. But from the supply side, you cannot expect a graduate from a vocational school to be the boss of those machines. So that is why it is more and more difficult for the employers and employees to match with each other.
So maybe in order to understand this growing demand for skilled workers, we need to understand what resulted in this growing demand, which has been this digital transformation and this application of modern facilities. And how common is this trend among the manufacturing sector in China?
Well, now the manufacturing sector in China is starting to go through a huge digitalization trend. But now in China, some of the large companies have quite advanced factories, and most of them are consumer goods companies like Haier and Midea. For example, they have some lighthouse factories identified by the World Economic Forum. These are the factories that are using cutting-edge technologies in the fourth industrial revolution to improve their productivity. Among the over 150 such lighthouse factories in the world, over 1/3 of them are in China. So you can see what is leading in China's smart manufacturing is also leading in the world. But those large companies only compose 10% in China's manufacturing sector. The rest 90% are small and medium-sized enterprises. And according to a report, now about 80% of those SMEs are at their very initial stage of digital transformation. But as industry insiders and as the Chinese lawmakers said, now digital transformation is no longer a choice for the SMEs. It is something they have to do right now to improve their competence in the fierce competition.
So it's understandable that the big firms were the first ones to apply these up-to-date, newer technologies. And when it comes to small and medium enterprises, it's probably more difficult for them to kick off this process because it requires a substantial initial investment. And will they be able to keep up with this trend?
Well, they are trying to keep up with the trend, and they do want to enjoy the benefits brought by digital transformation as what the large companies are enjoying, but they also are facing lots of difficulties that hindered them from going through this transformation process. The government is trying to roll out policies and measures to help them overcome those difficulties. First of all, the country is trying to create about 4,000 to 6,000 small lighthouse companies by the end of next year and make them demonstration models to show the other SMEs how to achieve digital transformation. Now, we can also see a lot of regional governments rolling out their own measures to help their own companies. One of the biggest challenge for those companies is the lack of money. They need to buy new equipment, the cameras, the sensors, but they have to bear the cost of failing in the process of digital transformation. So they need a lot of money to support them. Some regional governments are now offering very generous subsidies and rewards. In Chengdu, Sichuan province, the government promised to offer companies that can be listed as the lighthouse factories millions of yuan, or about hundreds of thousands of US dollars. And I asked an NPC deputy who's in charge of the digital transformation project in a small company how he felt about this amount of subsidy. And he said that was quite appealing for a small and medium enterprise like his company. And apart from money, they also need technological support. In Ningxia-Hui Autonomous Region, they are planning to build about 20 online industrial platforms this year to offer consultation and evaluation services to small and medium enterprises. The SMEs also need talent to support Going Smart Drive. A lot of governments are trying to launch projects to help to train talent. Like in Jiangsu province, they're training about 10,000 industry talents each year. So as we can see, the country and the regional governments have paid a lot of emphasis on digital transformation. When I interviewed NPC Deputy Liu Qin, who's the head of the Industrial Technology Research Institute of Jiangsu province, SMEs are a significant part of the province's economy. So the successful digital transformation of this group of companies will help the province to transfer from low and middle end manufacturing to the high end. And that is why the government has been pushing forward small and medium-sized enterprises, the 90% of manufacturing companies, to finish the transformation process.
So it is the current industrial transformation, the digitalization, that's created this demand, as well as the shortage for blue-collar workers with the according skill sets. And at the center of this shortage seems to be the vocational education. Mm-hmm. And based on the suggestions and discussion from these deputies you have talked with, how is the vocational education system catching up with this current digitalization trend?
Well, firstly, it's very nice to see that they're still making more efforts to train their students in terms of basic skills. They're not giving up the training of basic skills just because a lot of the labor work has been done by machines. The country is now holding skills competitions to encourage students to improve their capabilities. They're also taking part in world skills competitions. Like during the past 3 years, China has been topping the gold medal tally in the world skills competition. These efforts will lay a solid foundation for the cultivation of highly skilled workers because, as the deputies and as the industry insiders said, the highly skilled workers have to know what is happening within the production line. So they still need those basic skills. And they also mentioned that the most efficient way for the vocational education to catch up with this digital trend is to strengthen communication and cooperation between enterprises and schools. Now, in China, the vocational schools and enterprises are two quite different and separate systems. The enterprises are profit-oriented, so they have this motivation to buy the latest, the most advanced equipment and to improve their production methods. But the schools are education-oriented. They are cultivating students for the society, but not specifically for a certain company, let's say. So there's a natural gap between what the schools are teaching and what the industries really need. To close this gap, the deputies and also educators in China are calling for cooperation between enterprises and vocational schools. I also talked to an NPC deputy from a vocational school in Nanjing, Jiangsu province. His name is Dou Hongyu. His college is trying to invite technicians from the industry front lines to their schools to examine and assess their curriculum and their teaching plans to make sure that their teaching plan can fit their students into the industry needs. And they're also inviting companies to work on their campus, like they are offering a wide area on campus, and their partner companies would offer the latest equipment and their workers. So it's like building a mini company, a mini factory on campus. So this will show their students what is happening at the front line in this industry. And the whole vocational education system is also trying to update their majors. Over the past decade, nearly 70% of the majors in vocational schools have been updated in order to keep up with the change of demand from the industry side. So the government, the schools, and the society have been working actively to make their students adjust to the needs of enterprises in the manufacturing sector. It is impossible to keep the education head-to-head with the industry front lines, but we can at least narrow the gap. But it takes some time to make sure that the schools can offer the right people for the fast industry transformation.
Thanks so much for joining, Hongyu.
Thanks for having me.
The reform of vocational education has become a prominent topic during this year's political season in China. National lawmakers and political advisors have been discussing how to improve the vocational education system to align with China's rapidly transforming industries.
让传统产业向高端化、智能化。
On Friday, Minister of Industry and Information Technology Jin Zhuanglong announced that China has allocated state funding with the aim of supporting the digital transformation of over 40,000 SMEs in the next 3 years.
制造业向数字化。
As more companies in the manufacturing sector embrace digitalization, there will likely be a significant surge in demand for skilled blue-collar workers. The question now is whether vocational schools will be able to keep pace with this demand. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platform. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave comments to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yunqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qi Zhi. Special thanks to CGTN Radio reporter Dou Hongyu. I'll see you in the next one.